It was more than just not being able to hear anything or make contact with anyone. It was as though for a time I didn't exist. As though I had no place in the world. No part of the life around me.
Just what you are.
Welcome to the Cinematic Void Podcast. Cinematic Void is a cult film series that hosts screenings in the Los Angeles area as well as virtually. I'm your host, Jim Branscombe, and joining me as always is...
Hey, what's up? It's Nick Vance, Paranoid Features on social media. You can find Cinematic Void on the World Wide Web at cinematicvoid.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all major podcast platforms. If you want to support The Void, consider joining our Patreon. Fuck you, Jim. Fuck you and your stupid notes, dude. So here we are, man, episode 75, and we're going to celebrate by watching a movie and actually talking about it film this time.
Yeah, we'll just say episode 75.
It's a big milestone, dude. 75. We've been doing this for way too long.
Yeah, I guess technically this is episode 75 of recording. Its release will not be 79.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is called the...
You just said 79 instead of 75. I just want to point that out.
Well, it's in the 70s. That's where this episode lands. It's recorded at 75. Fine. I will make the number system different so it is 75, even though there's like 3 other episodes coming out before it.
Mm-hmm.
We did watch a movie today. We're actually, well, the way we record, this is part of our new... I guess it's not new because we've been doing it all year now, so it's not really a new thing. But we've been watching movies and then talking about them, taking notes and that kind of stuff. And
you're taking notes.
You're just
you've already seen it 100 times and you're taking notes.
Well, look, man, my memory's fucking bad. God damn. This is gonna be a rowdy podcast, isn't it?
Yep.
Fucking 2 melancholy fucking 60s horror movies shot in black and white, and Nick is just on one.
Yeah.
So now it's October, which means Halloween season. We whiffed last year and we didn't put out a single episode in October.
We didn't do anything for spooky season?
We did not
We didn't get spooky?
We did not get spooky.
That's fucking lame, dude.
We took a 4-month hiatus or something like
we did.
that. I'll take most of that blame, but I had some shit going on. You were actually busy. Well, I was busy too, but whatever. But this year we've made it a point to celebrate the spooky season and get some spooky content. I don't know how many more times I can say spooky, but here we are. But for October, we're gonna be watching some movies, and this is the first episode of Watch Some Movies. Actually, we're watching a lot of 60s movies for October.
Hell yeah.
Lots of things that are on, released on the Criterion Collection, which should make you happy.
Of course.
And, well, this one is kind of this is an episode we talked about doing for a while, and it's kind of a no-brainer because I feel like it's 2 of the most important, or maybe not the most, well, yeah, I don't want to say most important, but 2 of very important films that came out in the 60s that kind of drastically changed and altered where horror would go from the 70s onward. Both are influential. Both are, different, but kind of the same. And, of course, we're going to be talking about Carnival Souls, directed by Herk, Harvey, and Night of the Living Dead, directed by George A. Romero. A couple weird coincidences for both of these is both Herk, Harvey, and George Romero, worked in industrial educational films, and Romero did some commercials and stuff like that. They're both regional filmmakers. Herk was working out of Kansas, Romero out of Pittsburgh. Both had iconic horror films that fell into the public domain, which means they didn't have copyright and they got the shit bootlegged out of them. They basically, everything they put in those movies, they really didn't get back originally. They just got fucked.
Mm-hmm.
And, the big differing point is one of them ended up having a very long, esteemed career and became a horror icon, and the other one just kind of went back to the industrials and, educational movies and never made another feature film. And there's going to be things we'll talk about, circumstances, and, we're going to just kind of get on to that. So we're going to be talking about Carnival Souls and Night of the Living Dead. I'm going to say Carnival Souls is one of my all-time favorite movies, top 10. Night of the Living Dead is the movie that got me into cult films. So But there's a lot to compare and contrast with these. And Carnival's Carnival's your first time watch for this one, right?
Yep, first time. It's been on the list for a while. I think we've played it. We maybe played it at Los Feliz.
Yeah.
In the past year or so.
Yeah, I played it. And we'll talk about that.
Oh, right.
Duh. But yeah, so we're going to take a quick commercial break here, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about Carnival Souls on the Cinematic Void podcast.
For the less filling beer that tastes great, Miller Lite.
Halloween costumes from most stores have one built-in disadvantage. Anyone can buy the same costume. A costume from Ragstock, on the other hand, is unique because you selected yourself from a huge stock of recycled clothing. Create your own Dracula or Superman. Be a cowboy or a rock star, a tramp or a vamp.
Visit Ragstock at 327 State Street, Madison.
Presenting Sheer Madness, Circuit City's Midnight Madness Sale. Thursday only till midnight. Circuit City will go raving mad with shocking reductions on hundreds of items. Save on this VHS VCR, just $169. This RCA 19-inch color TV with remote is a mere $266. Circuit City's Midnight Madness Sale. Get there by midnight before the curtain falls.
Welcome back. It's officially Halloween time on the Cinematic Void podcast, and we're talking about two classic horror films from the 60s, both shot in black and white. Up first, we're talking about a film that came out in 1962. It's directed by Herk Harvey. It is Carnival Souls. Stars Candace Hilgoss, Sidney Berger, Francis Feast. Yeah, that's kind of a wild name, Francis Feast or Feist. Is it Francis Feist? I don't know. Feist. Yeah, it's Feist. Art Ellison, Stan Levette, and Harvey, who plays the man or the lead ghoul in the movie. The film was written by John Clifford. It was photographed by Maurice Prather, and there's music by Gene Moore, which has, I think, one of the best kind of like one-instrument scores next to like the Third Man with the zither or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this is all organ. You know, this film was shot in Lawrence, Kansas, and Magna, Utah by the Salt Lakes. And for those of you who haven't seen it, which I would hope you've seen it if you're going to listen to this episode, but after a traumatic accident, a woman becomes drawn to a mysterious abandoned carnival. Now, we kind of talked about in the intro, this is your first time watching it. And what was kind of your first impressions as going through it?
I really like the way everything is lit and shot. Like, I think that's like, even, we watched just the Criterion Blu-ray that you have, and the title screen that's just a loop of like little scenes and stuff. It's just like, it's instantly striking. And so kind of before I see much of anything, that's just like, damn, this fucking looks just amazing.
Yeah.
It's like really like that loop before you even hit play is like really fucking compelling.
Yeah.
It makes me go like, I need to know whatever the fuck this is.
So as we were watching it and like as it was unfolding, what were your thoughts on it? Because I'd rather get your first impression.
Well, I mean, I think it's I unfortunately did that thing that I hate when people do, where it's just like, I already know what this is. You know what I mean? Like because it's not a, as much as it does like unfold, it's kind of never feels like too secretive about the conceit there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I don't know, is she dead or is she not or whatever? I don't know if maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but
no, feel free.
But much like the movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, she went, there's the car wreck at the very beginning, and she climbs out of the water, and I'm just like, she's dead, dog. They're all dead, dog. And then as stuff happens throughout the movie, it does, but I like that it kind of makes you're kind of questioning it the whole time. It's always kind of ambiguous. And that's its charm, really. And it kind of leaves some things unexplained, even though it like does just like straight up tell you at the end. Mm-hmm. It still makes it go like, why? I don't know. Still, why was it like this? You know what I mean? It's all very much like a dream or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the things that, you go online and see is like people will say that David Lynch is a fan of this movie. And, I believe John Clifford, he also, besides writing this movie, also was a musician. I think he worked with Angelo Badalamenti, who of course went on to compose most of David Lynch's stuff.
Cool.
So I don't know if that's the connection to get there, but there is that connection. But like, there's a dream and nightmare logic to this.
Yeah.
And I don't know, before we kind of more dig deep, I just want to give the more context, and these are all the notes. Herk Harvey, worked for a company called the Centron Corporation, who basically made industrial and educational films. He, probably two of his most famous shorts is Shake Hands with Danger.
Which was used, I think, in like a Denzel Curry, Kenny Beats song.
Oh yeah, because it has that fucking song and Shake Hands for Danger runs through that whole short, which is like a work safety video.
Cool.
Shake hands with danger.
Shake hands with danger. Need a guy who ought to know. I used to laugh at safety. Now they call me Three-Finger Joe.
And he also did a Halloween safety kind of short film in the 70s that Centron or whatever, I think Cornette bought out Centron at some point and like redid it in the 80s or did a newer version of it. Elle Schneider, who actually when I screened this came out and did a little intro for Carnival Souls, she's currently working on a documentary on Centron and Herk Harvey in general. Actually not really getting into too much Carnival Souls, but more on like the Centron shorts and like how that company worked, which is kind of interesting because like I think that their office is now gone and stuff like that. It's like that company ran for years.
But in Kansas.
In Kansas, yeah.
Okay.
But the thing about it is like they would go shoot all over the country, outside the country to make these shorts. Like it was big business making industrial and educational movies because they're playing training videos for work.
Okay.
Like educational videos at different schools, like why is hygiene important and shit like that. So they were people might not consider that like, this, I mean...
Is that something that, like, I remember, dude, I worked at Bob Evans, like, at the tail end of high school, right? And, when you look a place like that, at least back then, and I feel like it's, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think they do that kind of thing anymore, man. Is there like a training video when you get a job at like if you got a job at like Target or something, do they show you a fucking stupid video before you start?
I'm kind of curious if they still do that because like I haven't worked one of those jobs, but if you go on YouTube,
I think maybe I'm just old.
Yeah, but if you go on YouTube, you can find most of those training videos. There's McDonald's, there's Blockbuster, there's Wendy's, there's like...
It's kind of cool.
It's because it was a big thing because they're like, all right, we're going to just sit you down and...
We'll be right back. We'll be back in an hour.
Yeah. Learn how to make fries from this video or whatever. But the cool thing about Centron and Carnival Souls is like everyone that kind of worked behind the scenes, like the crew, all worked for Centron. So it's, that's, I mean, there's going to be something we can point out when we talk about the look of the movie and how it's shot and all that, because like, they were making industrial films and education films, but all those people knew how to fucking make a movie because they had to.
Yeah.
Like they were highly skilled. This film was, made for $33,000 and it was shot basically over 3 weeks, which was the vacation Herk Harvey took away from his day job at Centron. They kind of shot in Kansas and went to Utah, and then I think they came back to Kansas and that kind of thing. The genesis of this film project is basically Harvey was working for Centron, did I think an industrial film in California, and he was driving back to Kansas, and he was going through Utah, and he kind of saw the Salt Air Pavilion, which is featured in this movie. And he kind of stopped and looked around and was like, what the fuck is this?
I mean, it's on the cover. It's in the cover art for the Criterion. And, it's definitely a big, like one of the main, features in the film. My first reaction when I saw this crazy looking building, I kind of didn't notice it on the cover so much. Like I could, because it just like focuses on her face or whatever, it's like a painting. But, as soon as I saw that building in the film, I went like, dude, that just looks like a wastewater treatment plant, like at least in Maryland or something. Like I feel like there's that weird ass thing in Dundalk that's like the two, you know what I mean? Like there's just weird shit like that. I don't know. That's when I see buildings. I don't know. It looks like it's like or just like a Polish dance hall, which I think is exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's...
I don't know why Polish, but...
I mean, yeah, I think you're thinking because I think there is a Polish dance hall in Baltimore, right?
So
that I don't know if this one was particularly Polish.
The Lithuanian hall, like, like I definitely saw some like Hell, the Melvins played there. Like there's some great hardcore shows there.
Yeah, I mean the thing about it is like it was like a legit hall, and I think at the time where it was near the Salt Lakes, the Salt Lakes were a little higher up, and it was more kind of a resorty thing. And then when the water receded, and I just eventually got abandoned. I know the original version of it burned down at some point, but I think they rebuilt kind of a thing, and it's still in that spot, or at least a variation of it, which I kind of want to go see. I mean, obviously it's not the same thing, but like I kind of just want to go there because of this movie.
Crazy. So was this was this well liked when it came out? Was this did people notice this film when it came out?
No, this was definitely an after the fact thing, because you know it's a low budget film, and one of the things before yesterday, so I've watched this twice in a row. I kind of wanted to listen to the commentary, just see if there's some nuggets in there, because Herk, Harvey, and John Clifford are on the commentary. It's one of those like scene specific commentaries. So like they'll talk for a little bit, then there'll be like 20 minutes of nothing, and then they come back on. And the thing he said that kind of struck me, and it makes a lot of sense, is that they want the look of a Bergman film and the feeling of a Cocteau film. Which means like their aspirations weren't horror movies. It was fucking art house. Yeah,
I mean they definitely nailed it. They definitely nailed it. There's a lot of that sort of like it's not very straightforward. It is very just artsy, you could say. But just the plot alone and the way that it moves along has that feel to it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
The way it looks, the editing. I mean, yeah.
It's if that movie was in a different language, I think the reception would have been different for it at the time, because you know Bergman, like all those things were being imported here and playing art houses and doing really well, but like an American film with that kind of sensibility on a low budget probably wasn't what they theaters were looking for. And kind of circling back to that Salt Air Pavilion, like after, Herk had seen it, he came back to Centron and he talked to John Clifford. He's like, hey, I want you to write a script. We're going to make a movie. He's like, I saw this like pavilion thing out in Utah, and I just have this vision of all these like kind of ghouls or whatever dancing in it. And that's basically all he gave me. He's like, that's the only scene I want. You can write everything else.
That's sick.
And yeah. So I can't remember how long Clifford took to write, but it was pretty quick. And Clifford, like, again, all these guys that they probably worked on various scripts or for like the industrials and education stuff. So they were really kind of in tune with it. So there really wasn't much of a leap going from industrial to like, feature film or indie film, because they already had the skill set. They had the equipment, they knew how to light, expose, like all that shit. So it wasn't like they were coming in like completely raw like a lot of indie filmmakers do.
Totally. But to be that good with like exposition, that good with, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. When I'm thinking of those industrial films, I mean, just like he's really good at telling a story.
Yeah.
And
that's the basis of all those industrial and education films. You have to tell a story in a certain confines, and there's certain points you have to hit, and this movie kind of hits them all. So I've already kind of alluded to this. This is one of my all-time favorite films, and this is in my top 10. And this was a film that like I liked when I originally saw, and it just kept growing and growing. And basically what happened, like during the lockdown, I was like basically living on a couch and, trying to go to sleep. And like the movie that I felt most comfort in was watching this movie. So I watched Carnival Soul. Sometimes I watched it multiple times a night. And if I'd been like tracking my letterbox of what I was actually watching, it had probably been like Carnival Souls 100 times or something in like 2020, 2021 or some shit like that.
I could definitely imagine, waking up and that loop is happening, and then you just hit play again and roll back over and go to sleep, Like,
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of what it was. There's times where like I didn't go to sleep and I watched it from start to finish. That loop hit, I hit play again, and then I was just absorbing this movie. And I think why I was watching it so much and kind of feel like I was relating to it was because like I was just in a weird place, and like some of it was lockdown, some of it was a lot of personal stuff, but like I just felt so disconnected to the world. And watching the Mary Henry character played by Candace Hilgoss, like I related to it. I related being, occasionally being around people and just not feeling like you connect or belong, or just feeling like you're just like a stranger in a strange land, or like you're just a ghost, kind of thing. And like it just really, really hit hard in a way like films can hit hard, but this one was just like, it was devastating, but it was kind of like eye-opening. It was a lot of things.
There are a lot of the film's charm is like very subtle things that happen that like blink and you'll miss it type things. And so it's definitely, for one, it's definitely not it's not something you want to watch with your phone in your hand.
No.
You know, I mean, you could say that about a lot of, most films really, but this one definitely is like that, where it's just those little things that if you miss them, they're gone, and it's never explained.
Yeah.
And it's, it makes me curious, since this is my first time seeing it, if you're kind of rewarded with more viewings.
I think so. I think this is a movie that, like, if you even if you don't catch everything, or like you're like, even if you're not paying, if you pay enough attention, there's something that kind of connects with you. And just like, it makes you want to revisit it, and like probably, and maybe the weakest part of it, and like it's not even like it's bad, it's just probably some of the actors, because like Candace Hilgos, who was studied at the actor studio with Marilyn Monroe and shit like that, she was the only professional actor. Everyone else was just kind of like local or whoever they could get. And I'm not saying people were giving bad performances, but like, I
mean, the guy, what was the
what was that?
The guy in the fucking that lived across the hallway from her.
Oh, the John Lyndon character. God.
I assumed he was actually an actor, because he was really fucking good at annoying the shit out of me.
Oh, that guy.
He sucks.
That, occasionally you see a male character that's like so misogynist, so like I don't even know what to put the words on. I feel like we've met and hung out with people like this. So he was played by Cindy Berger, and I think he was the one that actually cast Candace, because like everyone else couldn't afford to go to New York. He's like, well, I'm going to be there anyway, so I can do a casting for you. So he's the one who got her.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, his performance it's really great, because like it's just so slimy. It's like you feel dirty.
Yeah.
Because like, it's behind the eyes, it's out on his face, like everything. It's just like lust and like just cringe. Like it's very uncomfortable. The way he like positions himself, body language, and like getting into her personal space, it's like, holy shit, dude. Like, I feel like you would get slapped by most people. It's because she's like in a weird, like, am I alive, dead, weird state that like he can, be that big of a creep.
Right.
And I do like the fact that he's like, no, please stay with me. And he's like, you're too weird. I'm not getting crazy, dealing with your crazy shit kind of thing. So like that was the crossing line. It's like, I don't know, man. It's like you seem crazy, even though like she was kind of putting out some vibes that like things weren't right, and like I kind of wonder why that was. It's probably because she didn't reciprocate when he tried to kiss her like 40 times. I think one too many cock block. He's like, I can't handle this. You're nuts. But I don't know. That guy nails the piece of shit character, like completely. This film, like, I ended up finally screening this. This has been on my list to screen for a while, but like never really had opportunity. And like last April 2022, I did a series called Horror by the Water, and I did 3 movies because I took a vacation to Salem, Massachusetts, which town that's by the water, so horror by the water there. It all fits. It's all symmetrical or whatever. But I also showed Messiah Evil in the Fog with that. And I feel like going from Carnival of Souls to Messiah Evil was a really good 1-2 punch.
Nice.
And if you haven't seen Messiah of Evil yet,
I haven't.
I highly recommend it. It's kind of in the same vibe, but even darker and more like violent and maybe more overt, but same kind of like dream nightmare logic kind of flows through it.
Cool.
I want to say, seeing Carnival of Souls in the theater, we got Harry Guerrero's 35mm print.
Nice.
And I just sat in the back, and it was like seeing the movie for the first time.
Oh, man. Killer.
It was like one of the most beautiful cinematic experiences I had in a theater, and I just like kind of melted into it. And it's like, I really didn't want the movie to end.
Man, I wonder, it makes me want, because I love how much, like, I love the way this film looks so much. I'm curious of the condition of that print and what year it was from and all that stuff. And like,
I'm not sure if it's original or where it came from, but like it, because it's black and white, it wouldn't suffer from the Eastman fade. So, the contrast and like the black and whites look really, really good. I think last reel there was some like damage where there was a couple light leaks into like kind of the frame, but like that kind of added to it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, that was one of my favorite movie going experiences, period.
Cool.
And just to kind of wrap things up on talking in that context and kind of give a plug to the Cinematic Void zine, I actually did a Horror by the Water issue. It was issue 3, and I, talk about the whole series, but I talk a little bit more about Carnival of Souls and kind of how much this movie is meant to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we were watching, I took some notes. I've seen this movie a lot, but there's a couple things that, I thought worth pointing out. And like one of them is the Mary Henry line of, "Thank you, but I'm not coming back."
Mm-hmm.
When she's like basically like at the organ building facility.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, well, come say hi when you come back." "I'm never coming back." And it's just kind of a weird foreboding like seed.
Yeah.
Good luck, Mary. Stop by and see us the next time you're in.
Thank you, but I'm never coming back.
Also, I should mention, like, the reason why she plays organs in the movie is by the fact that they got that location to use the organ making facility.
Oh, okay.
So it was like kind of a plot point by convenience, but I think it was a happy accident because her playing the organ, the church stuff, and then that whole soundtrack that's all organ, kind of just, it seems on purpose.
I mean, the fact that she's dead and all that stuff, and then her going and getting the job in the church, like it just, it's a happy accident that for sure just adds to it entirely.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I guess we can talk about this now. So you're just under the impression she was dead the whole time. That's where you're going with it.
Yeah, I thought it was, fucking Sixth Sense,
I mean, it's a good, I think there's multiple ways you can look at this movie.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like it. And like, there's times I watch it where it's like she's clearly dead, but like, is she a ghost? Like, because she's interacting with people, but then there's other times she can't. Is that because like the ethereal
it does make me second guess some of those things, but then kind of it's like at the end, it shows you, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a weird full circle thing. Like she got out of the water, and then like when they dragged the car out, her body's back in there, and like, is it just a death dream she's having? Is it just, there's a lot of possibilities. And like, or did she like temporarily escape her fate and was trying to move on? And like all those ghouls, like the lead one played by Herk, Harvey, are they coming to get her back and like, take her to where she's supposed to be, which is dead.
Right on.
Like, yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. And there's little subtle things where there's shifts. And, like, we actually went back and rewound it the first time when she's in the dressing room and she's buying a dress at the department store. There's, like, a little ripple kind of, I don't know if it's optical transition, whatever you want. It looks like rainwater going down the frame.
It's like the Wayne and Garth, like, I mean, actually, if it is kind of changing the, changing what, is she dead? Is she not dead?
Yeah, so, like... It's like she's in between two worlds. Mm-hmm. Like she's kind of 1 foot living, 1 foot in the grave.
Schrodinger's babe. I don't know.
But like when that happens and she kind of leaves and then she's trying to interact with people and she can't because like there's no sound other than like her shoes and her talking.
Yeah.
Like it's a really cool like kind of effect thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just feeling, she already feels lost and disconnected. And she says a couple times in the movie, there's another quote here. Or like, actually it's not a quote from her, it's a quote from the minister, or the preacher or whatever you want to call it, at the church she's working for. Basically the line is, you can't live in isolation from the human race.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like these weird like prophetic, like borderline nihilistic, like ideals running through this thing, which are very European.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think there's too many American movies that are like, you can't be isolated. Well, maybe I want to be isolated.
Yeah.
But back to like her like walking around and just like can't interact with anyone, no one can see her, no one there. And then she goes to that park and all of a sudden she hears birds. And that's like the reawakening to the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, all the cutaways to, like, when she sees, like, the ghouls, or mostly Herk Harvey's character when he just pops up here and there. It's just like, what are nightmares? What are actual visions? What are imagination? Or, are they actually just entities that are chasing after her?
Yeah.
Lots of shit to unpack. Another line I really liked in this movie, and it's from, Mary, is a church is a place of business.
Mm-hmm.
Which, maybe now... That's a line you can get away with. Could you imagine uttering that line in the 60s?
Oh, true.
Where it's just like she's a church organist and she like doesn't give a shit other than it's a job.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that's part of the whole, like, I'm not part of this world. I'm not part of your, like, construct of religion and all that because I've already seen the other side and I'm already on the other side. So that shit don't matter. I mean, I'm throwing theories out there because that was one thing about John Clifford. John Clifford refused to give clarity.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, this is what I wrote. Do I have all the answers? It's like, I'm not even sure I have all the answers. But
yeah,
I think he just liked the idea that was open for interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really cool and kind of ballsy for, like, an independent film that, like, you know, not made for much money and just kind of, like, trying to find a foothold to get in there. And I want to point this out because, like, the crew is exceptional. That photography by Prather, holy shit. Like, you already talked about it, but, like, it's amazing. It's some of the best black and white cinematography I've seen in any film, period.
Mm-hmm. It's the... You know, it's the costumes, it's the set pieces. It all like interacts with one another. You know, because it's black and white.
Yeah.
It's just really like clean. It's just really, you know, it's for something so cheaply made. It's fucking. It looks expensive.
Well, it does because, like, you know, there's little camera tricks. There was one thing I pointed out where, like, she's at the gas station. Like, hey, where's the, you know, I'm staying at a boarding house type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the gas attendant points and they do a whip pan and it lands right in the interior of the room she's staying at, which is some clever, you have to think about that shit before you do it stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Obviously, probably landed some locations and some of the things were by accident, but, like, once those were incorporated, nothing in this movie is happening by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's calculated. Everything's thought through, and it's just like it's just so well executed that, like, I don't know, I'm kind of just blown away that, like, this movie existed and, like, you know, a group of, like, it was a 5-man crew including Herk that, like, was shooting this movie, and then they did, I think, a couple weeks to edit, and then, like, they're just trying to get it out there. And, like, basically what happened in this movie is, you know, it fell in the public domain. They had a distributor and they hit up the distributor and they're like, yes, we owe you some money, because I think it was playing on some double feature, hitting the drive-in circuit and that kind of stuff. And then they got a check, went to cash check bounced, and then that company went out of business. And when it went out of business, it threw whatever films they had into limbo, including Carnival of Souls.
Shit.
Which kind of brings the dark side of this because, you know, as I will say this, Herk Harvey's a fucking great director.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you can see it in, like, the industrial shorts and educational stuff he made, but you really can see it in this. And I think because of what happened with the release and the distribution and the fact that it fell in public domain and he lost control and, like, basically lost money on it, he never made another feature film.
Bummer.
Like, he just, you know, he's still working at Centron, just kept doing that. I think he worked there until maybe 1985 or 86 and then retired. Like, okay. Yeah, he just kept grinding. And I think there was a couple times he thought about and tried to, like, maybe do another film and just never pulled the trigger past maybe the script phase.
Mm-hmm. Which
is kind of really sad because it's like, you know, there's probably a psychological aspect. You put your heart and soul and make, like, this movie where you're, like, striving to be like Bergman, Cocteau, like, you know, like all your favorite European, like, filmmakers, and you make something that's, like, at least comparable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not that far away, and it gets kind of originally shunned.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh, it's just fodder for, like, you know, late night TV or, you know, just another disposable cheapy horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, folks just weren't ready.
No, I think it was really ahead of its time. You know, it's even got callbacks to, like, you know, early cinema, like German Expressionism. Look how all the ghouls look. That's coming out, like, Dr. Caligari and, like, things like that.
You know, Herk looks like Grandpa Monster.
I'm trying to think when the Monsters came out. Maybe the Monsters was it in the 60s, but probably.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know for sure either, but, like, you know, this came out in 62, so, you know, I feel like this movie had a lot of influence on a lot of things. It actually has influence on Night of the Living Dead, which we will talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's just, it's you know, heartbreaking that Herk didn't make another movie, but, like, you know, like a lot of people that only made one movie, you know, sometimes you just need that one movie to cement your legacy.
Right.
And it's like, you know, if he made another movie and it wasn't nearly as good as Carnival of Souls, would it change Carnival of Souls?
Yeah.
It's sort of like Charles Lawton in Night of the Hunter. Night of Hunter is a fucking masterpiece, but because it failed at the box office, Charles Lawton never made another movie as a director.
Is that his only film?
It's the only one he directed.
Right on. It's a banger as well.
So, but at the same time, if he made another film, would it feel the same?
If we went on to make Jaws 2.
Yeah, if he went on to make Jaws 2. Actually, if Charles Lawton had made Jaws 2, I think it would have been good.
Right on.
Actually, no. That movie would never have been good. Jaws 2 should never exist. But, I don't know. Final thoughts on Carnival of Souls.
It's sick. It's real sick. Great shit. I'm glad you finally forced me to watch it. It's been on the list for a while, and it's not a dud. It'll probably end up in my Criterion collection for sure.
Now, the other thing we have to talk about, the elephant in the room, is Nikolai's 2-star rating of Carnival of Souls on Letterboxd.
In Nikolai's defense, I think he was scrolling Instagram while he watched this and maybe kind of missed some of its magic. Nikolai, give it a rewatch, man. Good shit.
I'm just kind of fucking with him because, like, honestly, and we've kind of talked about it, is if you're just watching on a very surface level, way of viewing, which I'm sure a lot of people do, it can just look like this is a dumb, cheesy horror movie.
Yeah.
That's shot in black and white. I don't get it. You see a flaw and you just get drawn into the flaw, and then you're just not watching the magic of how it happens.
Yeah.
And I think, as much as I'm busting Nikolai's balls, I think that's a fair way to watch it too. But if you're going to like engage with art, which you should be when you're watching a movie, you get so much more out of it. And, if you watched Carnival Souls and you felt like, maybe give it another watch, but just kind of put your phone down and just engage with 78 minutes. It's not asking a lot of you.
Well, if it's, in Nikolai's defense, I'm about to give Night of the Living Dead 2.5 stars. Let's fucking go.
Oh, to be continued. So on that note, we're going to take a commercial break, but when we return, we may have a very controversial continuation of the Cinematic Void podcast.
Hey, you want to drag, huh? Rev it up.
Action you've never seen races across your screen as you thrill to a new dimension in picture making. Carnival of Souls. This is the shocking story of a who crawled from the river to race through a nightmare, walking a tightrope between heaven and hell. From the unreal, she crashes through to reality. But try as she will to lead a normal life, she is torn from her goal. There's no privacy in a life she's ever watched, tormented. Either it's her neighbor, desirous of her physically, watching her with his leering eye, or it's the evil eye of the man who taunts her, the man who wants her. From the bottom of the river they come. They reach for her. They demand that she dance with them at the Carnival of Souls. She is a girl driven mad by the relentless forces of the beyond. He will not relent as he comes for her again and again. She whirls between the real and the unreal, trying to cling to life.
I like being with you, really I do. I don't want to be alone tonight. I want to be near you.
Honey, you don't want to go in there all by yourself, do you?
But she must watch herself in death. She must dance at the Carnival of Souls held just for her. For they have come for her for the last time, claiming her as one of their own. Carnival of Souls arouses such emotion that the management has been forced to state positively no refunds. Carnival of Souls is the shocker of all time, guaranteed to sweep you into a new dimension of picture making. You can't afford to miss Carnival of Souls.
Welcome back. We are talking about some 60s horror classics here on the Cinematic Void podcast. We just talked about Carnival of Souls, and now we're talking about a movie that is just, well, I wouldn't say just. I think this movie is probably in the eyes of many more iconic, and we're going to kind of go at the end of this segment, kind of break down the compare and contrast of this film with Carnival of Souls for a lot of obvious reasons. I mean, it's the reason why we're doing this fucking podcast episode on it. But we are going to be talking about the 1968 film Night of the Living Dead, directed by George A. Romero, Stars Dwayne Jones, Judith O'Dea, Carl Hardman, Marilyn Eastman, Judith Riley, Bill Heinzman, Bill Cardell, Russ Streiner, Vince Fervisky, and tons of Pittsburgh and that sort of area locals. The film was written by Romero and John A. Russo. Romero was also the cinematographer and co-editor on the movie, even though he's not credited as either. And the movie was produced by Streiner and Hardman, and the music which is really good in this movie, and I really like, is actually a bunch of library cues, from orchestral stuff to like some dirgy kind of synth stuff. So we'll be talking about all those things. And if for some odd reason you haven't seen this movie, well, let me give you a little plot synopsis. A ragtag group of survivors barricade themselves into an old farmhouse to remain safe from a horde of flesh-eating ghouls that are ravaging the northeast portion of the United States.
Now, when you say ragtag, what exactly do you mean? I don't think that people outside of 1968 know what ragtag means.
Well, this was from the IMDb synopsis.
That's right. I'm calling you out for not writing your own fucking synopsis.
Well, you're right.
Just copy and paste.
Yeah, because...
Ragtag?
Well, usually I look at the synopsis because it just makes it easier to kind of like... Because then if I describe, it's going to take like 10 minutes to just get to the point.
That's probably true.
So I'm trying to condense it down. But I saw ragtag in there. It's like, who the fuck wrote ragtag? And it was just so dumb that I was like, I'm just leaving it. Knowing that I was going to open this fucking booby trap where you're going to be like, ragtag.
Ragtag, dude. I'll never allow the word ragtag again on this podcast if I have a say at all.
Well, you could have edited it out. You had the notes.
That's true. I still have my chance.
You had your chance. We
just cut it out. A group.
This will make this next section like so fucking weird. A group of survivors. What do you mean by who uses it outside of the 19... No, we're running this bit into the ground. Anyway, no more ragtag. Just before we dive into talking about the movie, I just want to give a little bit of context, mostly for Romero. George Romero, who I think his father was Spanish, but moved to Cuba, eventually ended up in the Bronx, and that's where Romero grew up, and he was an avid film watcher, and one of his favorite movies was The Tales of Hoffman by Powell and Pressburger, which is an incredible fucking movie.
The Archers.
Yes, The Archers. And he would go rent it from the library and on 16 millimeter, because that's how you would have to rent a movie back in the day. And there was another young lad that loved movies that was renting it beside him, and they were kind of in competition of who could get that movie whenever. And that little young lad was Martin Scorsese. That was the budgeting cinephiles who eventually became filmmakers. So it's kind of cool that those two guys with vastly different careers, but both equally iconic, and depending on the circle you look at, going after that movie by the Archers. Romero eventually went to college at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and after he finished his higher education, decided to stay there and start his career. He started making short films, worked on commercials, industrials, very similar to Herk Harvey, who we were talking about. As he was working, he also ended up doing a couple film segments for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which was shot in Pittsburgh. Mr. Rogers is really, Fred Rogers gave Romero the beginning of his filmmaking career. I think
those puppets are just as creepy as any zombie in this fucking movie.
Yeah, that's true.
I always hated those little stupid puppets.
What would make those puppets even worse if they went to Dunkin' Donuts?
They're really they're creepy, dude. With their little
those puppets are kind of nightmare feel. Yeah. But that was entertainment back then. That goes back to those Punch and Judy dolls that were always kind of a little fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just in general, puppets. I think the Muppets kind of soften what a puppet is to people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, puppets, especially the wooden ones and marionettes, they're all fucked up and creepy. Ugh, puppets. I never really thought of how creepy puppets are until you brought it up, but you're goddamn right.
Yeah.
But anyway, off of Fred Rogers here. So as Romero met some homies in
Schenectady, New York, the fucking
we still going
creepy,
on still going on puppets. But yeah, back to Romero in Pittsburgh and all that. He eventually formed a group called Image 10 Productions. It was with John Russo and a bunch of the people that were on the cast and crew of Night of the Living Dead, and they kind of decided hey, why don't we make a movie? And two, what kind of movie can we make that will get, a financial return on our investment? Obviously horror. because like the drive-in circuit, 42nd Street exploitation market. And
so it's like if you don't have a lot of money but you want to make some, you go horror in this era.
Well, it's kind of still the golden rule. Like a lot, that's why there's a lot of really shit horror movies, because people kind of take that adage of like, oh, well, horror movies make a lot of money and you can make them cheap, so I'm going to make a horror movie. In which why you get like tons of movies where someone goes to Big Bear, rents a fucking cabin, and makes a shit horror movie there. Mm-hmm. And it's basically like a one-room thing, which in essence, this movie's kind of like a one-location room movie for a lot of it. Yeah, obviously, there's some, getting there, getting out, and that kind of things. But like, that's the wrong lesson that a lot of filmmakers took. It's like, oh, it's just one location. It's like, yeah, but it has to be a good location. You have to do something with it. You can't just have it like basically take a bullshit vacation at Big Bear and make a fucking shit horror movie.
The Chris Dorner story.
All right, so we're going to get into talking about this movie. And at the end of the last segment, you said this was a 2.5 star rating on Letterboxd. How do you feel about it after we just watched it now?
I would say that I generally give Day of the Dead 3 stars.
You give Day of the Dead 3?
Yeah.
Day of the Dead's my 2.5. Day of the Dead's either 2.5 or 3 to me, depending on my mood. Mm-hmm. Actually, there's times where I've watched if you want to go back, I think it's episode 3, which is only exclusively on Patreon now. We talked about Day of the Dead with Death Wish 3 for the Void 3-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. And I've always had this love-hate relationship with Day of the Dead. Sometimes I'm watching it like, yeah, I'm cool with it. Other times I watch it, I absolutely don't like the movie.
Yeah.
It bugs the shit out of me. So, and it's weird that I've never had a consistent reaction to Day of the Dead. It's like, sometimes it's like, it's a 2-star movie. Sometimes it's a 3.
I think I would move this one up to 3 and just have it equal with Day.
I think it's a lot better than Day, but that's just me. Yeah. I think it says more, and I think cultural impact and like, impact on the horror genre in general kind of have to elevate it a little bit higher than 3. But if you're looking at purely as movie to movie, what you want out of a movie, I get why you would land on 3.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it still doesn't blow me away, but this is probably the most fun I've ever had watching it, but mostly because I was just naming which new actors I would put in place for all the actors in this film if I recreated it today. And I think I have some good suggestions.
Why don't you drop your like your Night of the Living Dead remake? If Nick Vance was remaking it, who would you cast?
All right, so for the Ben, I'm going, it's either Chitty from The Good Place. So I don't even know actors and actors, especially like in modern actors and actors. I don't know their names. And this is not even that modern. But I'm going either Chitty from Good Place, because I have a couple of Good Place actors that I'm throwing in here for no reason. But maybe just Daniel Kaluuya, the Get Out guy.
Yeah.
From Nope as well. But he's just great.
Oh, he's great. I mean, if you know anything about, Get Out, Jordan Peele, one of his big influences was Night of the Living Dead.
Right on, there you go. I think he would play a great Ben. Then we've got, then I think I'm just going, fuck, man. I really Kevin Spacey for the Kevin Spacey character.
Oh, you mean the Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
I was suggesting David Cross as we were talking about.
Also good. I like David Cross in like a suit and tie with a gun in his hand.
Yeah, and just being sniveling and like whiny and just just very punchable.
With the glasses.
Yeah, I think I think that's a good Mr. Cooper there.
And then you got and then I want Zac Efron playing the Zac Efron character.
Oh, the young dude.
Like I don't know their names. I don't know.
I'm blanking on his name.
If you see him and Zac Efron, and I'm talking Iron Claw, He-Man haircut, like doing like what he's doing for the Von Erich movie.
Yeah.
Like that era, like now Zac Efron, like all beefy and shit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Shirt tucked in, He-Man haircut, fucking ready to go. I don't know. I think I got it all wrapped up. I mean,
would you say Kristen Bell for the Judith O'Dea Barbara character?
Kristen Bell for Barbara. Oh, I hate they're coming to get you, Barbara. Whatever. I hate that line, dude. That shit sucks.
I love that you're like just shitting on probably one of the most iconic
There's a word. Oh, Barbara. Ooh, fucking shut up, dude.
Now, do you dislike that line because of the cultural osmosis and how it's been like?
It's part of it, but I also just think that guy was annoying, and like who like they're grown adults. They don't play like that. She's not scared. Oh, well, I'm so scared because you said my name was spooky.
Well, I think she was more scared of being in the cemetery, which,
it's a load of crap.
It's a load of crap. Well, I mean, if you got a childhood trauma around like cemetery,
don't believe it. Don't believe in it.
All right, I was gonna say this for a little later, but before
I got a little like, if I'm in a basement and someone cuts the lights off, man, I'm running up those steps. You know what I mean?
Okay, so how's that different from being in a cemetery and just like worried about something fucking grabbing you?
Because nobody can turn the lights off.
Is it because it's out?
Because we're there in the daytime, presumably. I'm thinking of that scene.
Yeah, but what happens if you're there at night?
I'm more scared. so I'm more scared than I would have been. No, I don't know. I'm a realist and I wouldn't be scared in a cemetery. You're fine. It's just it's a park.
Yeah, but like
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but like,
it's just I don't buy it. I just don't buy the scene.
You don't buy the scene?
I'm not buying it. Oh, stop saying that in a spooky manner at me.
I mean, he's just fucking around.
I know.
But it comes back to bite him, literally.
Or she, I mean, she's not pretend. She's literally scared as shit because he's going Barbara.
Well, no, I think it's because the story he talks about when he scared her as a kid in the cemetery, and I think that just hangs on there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's the connotation.
I mean, it is, but I do despise it. I do despise it. It's not believable. It's not believable. Or more so, I just think if I saw those people acting that way in real life, I would go, I fucking hate those people. They're fucking corny.
Well, maybe that's why the Bill Heinzman League attacked them.
Yeah, I mean, they are the villains of the story.
I don't think they're the villains of the story. Zombies, they're the heroes. Humans, well, I mean, that is a way to look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a legit way to look at it. So I'm going to double down and talk about the cemetery part. So Night of the Living Dead was basically the movie that got me into cult and horror movies. That was my gateway drug, and I saw it way too young. If you want, there's an episode of In the Mouth of Sid Madness on the Cinematic Void YouTube channel where I go in depth about it. But, I'm just going to do the brief synopsis of that video because you should go check that out. But basically, I lived near a cemetery growing up, and after seeing Night of the Living Dead, I had a rational fear that zombies would come out of the graveyard and walk to my parents' house and fucking break in and eat me.
You're Barbara.
I'm not Barbara. I'm
I'm not Barbara.
I'm not Barbara, goddammit. Oh, man, I did. You never had an irrational fear as a kid?
Oh, definitely. Like there's definitely like something under my bed that would grab me, and I'd have to jump from like really far away.
See, I did
a little bit of that, a little bit of like when you walk up or down some stairs, there's like always something chasing you every time.
See, I never had that. I just thought like zombies could come out of the graveyard and get me. Like that was like something I thought about like nightly for like
you
fucking.
Should have watched this movie.
I saw it on TV as a kid really young, and I didn't even see the whole movie. I basically what I saw was from the opening.
I'm glad that all my childhood traumas come from like parents instead of just like watching some movie. Like a normal person.
Well, you remember this is our free therapy here on the podcast as we're working through all of our fucking fears. But like, yeah, I saw it way too young, and like when this finally came out, like the first remaster that Elite Entertainment put out in like probably like mid '90s, and I got it on VHS, bought it at Kmart, and like that was the first time I kind of sat down.
Kmart.
Yeah, fucking Kmart rules. Rest in peace.
What do you think, Kmart or Ames?
I think Kmart. Ames always kind of like felt like it smelled.
Fair.
Like I remember going to Ames as a kid and Kmart because that was before there was Target and Walmart. Like it was a big deal to go either. It's like I remember when they first opened the Kmart in Beard Hill near where I lived, and they had like a bunch of Baltimore Oriole baseball players there because that was the big deal. It was this fucking big fucking Kmart opening. I don't know who it was, probably Brooks Robinson or something.
Scott McGregor.
Nah, I think it was retired dudes. I think it was Brooks Robinson. Might have been probably Cal Ripken Sr. or something like that because they're from there.
Yeah.
That seems to make the most sense. But yeah, that Kmart was a big deal, and that's where I bought Night of the Living Dead. This is getting silly, but anyway, with all this context, let's just talk about this movie and as we're doing it, even though we, watch Carnival of Souls and we just talked about Carnival of Souls on its own merit, I kind of want to do it for Night of the Living Dead before we get into the compare and contrast. But like, from the gate, I'd say, like, there's some interesting stuff. The one thing you pointed out was all the Dutch and, like, slanted angles that were in this movie, like, for all the camera work.
No, I'm not fully from. I mean, I've heard that term used, bandied about, but I guess I don't really know what that means or like where that originated from. What the hell is a Dutch angle?
So Dutch angle is just an angle where it's like slightly askewed. It's not straight on. Like, if you look at a doorway, it's like more like crooked and like kind of like fun housey, like you're walking through a fun house and like you're walking sideways. Like the best example of Dutch angles is if you see The Third Man with Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten. There's a lot of that movie where like it flips to like a lot of Dutch angles and it flips back to normal and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of where it's been popularized, and when people like do a lot of Dutch angles, it's usually the point of reference. But this movie has a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think, because obviously everyone working on here had made films, shot commercials, that kind of stuff, and like sort of like in the Herk, Harvey, Centron like crew. But like there's something about this, like, and this is not to be disrespectful, but this is also kind of the reason why I really liked this movie as a kid and got me into horror, is because I could see the nuts and bolts, because it's definitely a low budget amateur production.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see some of that. Some of the lighting isn't quite there. When we were watching this transfer on the Criterion Blu-ray, you can see where sometimes, like, depending on what lens they were using, they got a little bit of the lens in the corner and things like little things, like little imperfections, but I don't think they necessarily detract from the movie. And I think what really the strength of what makes that movie work is George Romero as an editor. And I will always stand by that. He's one of the finest editors who probably doesn't get the credit he deserves.
Yeah.
He just has a very rhythmic editing. Like, there's things where like they cut to almost a slightly different angle. It's not like it cuts to a close-up, but like just like one shot's like kind of like a medium shot, and then it cut to a medium shot, and it's like almost identical, but the way it cuts, it just feels so natural and so organic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like there's a natural rhythm to it. And like I look at things like The Crazies, where he was like montage editing like crazy, pun intended, I guess. And like Martin and like Dawn of the Dead, he's like, that's spectacular editing, the way he just cuts everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just like taking all the stuff they shot and just the way they edited it and the little cross cuts. But even in the camera work, because like you'll see like it'll start as a Dutch angle and someone will run into the frame, and then like a kind of like pan one way or the other, and just like it's really interesting. And like I don't want to say I know if they probably storyboarded some of it, but like it feels like a lot of it's like almost cinema verite or instinctual how they were moving the camera and stuff.
It all feels very intentional. It's not, despite being low budget, it's not amateurish.
No, and I don't mean amateur as derogatory. I think it's just like low budget, whatever equipment they had, just there was limitations, and like
one of my favorite things about it, and it's I'm sure it's, I mean it obviously works for the plot just fine, but one of its strongest points is just that it's one of those films where it takes place mostly in one location.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't quite like I have a little letterbox list going of like films that take place in one location.
Yeah.
And this doesn't quite like meet the criteria for the list. Like it's just a little too outside for me.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite things about it. I love a good film that like you can get a lot out of it in just like one set piece.
Yeah, because like if you think about like the cemetery is like the first big location, and then she gets to the farmhouse, and
Mm-hmm.
once you're at the farmhouse, it's all the surrounding area around the farmhouse. And like anything outside of like from the cemetery to there, anytime you hear or see anything, it's either someone's telling you a story or it's on the news.
Yeah, it adds to the isolation.
Yeah, the movie's very like well done in how it's like isolated and claustrophobic and like the tension, especially when like everyone gets into the fucking upstairs and like there's the power struggle between Ben and Mr. Cooper and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to say like the performances are pretty good all around.
Oh yeah.
And like Dwayne Jones like should have been a fucking star.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably because of the time this movie came out, also because it's a horror movie that got kind of shit on upon its release.
Mm-hmm.
His career probably didn't go where it should have went, because he's fucking dynamic in this movie.
Is he in many other things before this or after?
After probably the biggest movie he was in after his Ganja and Hess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he did a lot of theater and stuff like that, which is like, I think Outside the people that were from Pittsburgh, they were just like pulling in theater people. And it's really interesting that he's the lead in the movie because, you know, it's 1968. You know, there's race riots, racial tension in America.
Mm-hmm.
And Romero famously said, it's like, I cast him because he was the best actor for the role.
Yeah.
Not even like considering the fact that he's African American.
Yeah.
And truly, he is the best actor for the role. He's like iconic in it. I think when I showed this like last year when I was doing 60 Shockers and we were screening like a pretty good 35 millimeter print of Night of the Living Dead, and I watched the audience get really invested in Dwayne Jones' performance as Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Like people were, you know, all in for him. And it was, you know, when he dies, when he gets shot at the end, just watching the, you know, the air gets sucked out of the room and people just being devastated in a way they weren't prepared for was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like, you know, Dwayne Jones just gives a great performance. And I think everyone else is pretty good too, you know?
Oh yeah.
And
Zac Efron was great.
You know, Mr. Cooper played like that's Carl Hardman. Like he played the perfect, like sniveling, like just, I don't know, just asshole.
I'm telling you, Kevin Spacey's perfect for the role. David Cross too, but Kevin Spacey I think could bring a certain kind of asshole to it that would really pop off.
I think especially where Kevin Spacey is in life right now would add extra credence to it. Like, you know, you already hate Mr. Cooper, but Kevin Spacey is Mr. Cooper. He's like trying to fuck Zac Efron. Yeah, that would just that's a whole other dynamic, and probably why your version will never get made. Oh God, but you know, this movie just for me, I think where it kind of like happens, like because like when they're in the house, it's kind of a theater play.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, it's like a David Mamet play or something like that.
Yeah.
So
you're really trying to sell me on this. I love it.
Yeah, because I'm mentioning Mamet to you, but I mean, I'm just using Mamet as an example. But it's a good dramatic play, and like, you know, but even in the house, there's multiple locations. There's the downstairs, there's the upstairs, there's outside, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, as much as it's self-contained, there is a full world out there, and then all the zombies outside. So one thing I do want to talk about is like this movie came out in 1968, the Hays Code, which had been like saddled with American film productions for the studios of self-censorship from like, I think it was enacted in 1930, but didn't really go in effect until 1934, had just disappeared because it was just arcane and out of date and like, you know,
Blown Away. It lasted till 68.
Well, it was falling apart starting in the 50s because you had people like Otto Preminger who was fighting to use the word panties in a fucking movie, and like, you know, it was just little different directors were chipping away at it at different times. Like Hitchcock, famously for the movie Notorious, where Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant like kind of make out. I think there was a time limit on how long someone could kiss. So they would kiss, they would stop, they would say a line of dialogue, they would kiss again, so he could make this long, extended kissing scene while following the rules, but really just breaking the rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the Hays Code just disappearing, it kind of opened the door for filmmakers to get fucking wild. Because a lot of European movies were being imported, and you can see it, and like obviously, like, you know, there's nudity, there's violence, they're much more open than where America was, and America's like, fuck this, we want to be able to compete on that level, like artistic intent.
We want a single naked zombie.
Well, there was. You got to see a single naked zombie, which is probably a good. I'm sure that was put in there as a selling point.
Mm-hmm.
Just like anything, like, you know, it's classic exploitation rules. Put in some nudity, put in some violence. Then you have both your selling points for exploitation films. And this movie has them both, you know. Because, like, the thing that makes Night of the Living Dead, where it, like, culturally, you know, changed horror movies forward, was the fucking violence. When fucking Zac Efron character guy, like, him and his girlfriend get fucking torched in the truck because they just... It's amazing that they make this big effort to go out to the gas tank, and they just fuck it up so bad.
Yeah.
Just this incredible thing of like, oh, we made it. Oh, we have fucked it up. Although I do want to mention, when Ben shoots the fucking lock off the gas tank, this is the one time where I kind of question something that happened in movies. Like, wouldn't the gas tank just fucking blow up?
I think so. But it was leaded gas, which we're not that familiar with.
That's true. Yeah. When did that change? I guess that's probably in the 70s when they went to unleaded.
It's probably still pretty, highly flammable.
Yeah, probably. I mean, also, what was that gun? Was it like a 22? Like it wasn't a shotgun. It was just more of like.
Yeah.
It's more like for fucking like pigeon hunting or some shit. Like
buckshots.
Yeah,
Who's throwing the buckshot?
Well, and no buckshot in that is pretty concise because the size of the bullets are pretty. So I think it's probably like a 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it has some pop, but not a lot of pop. But I do feel like it would have blew up that fucking gas tank or gas dispenser or whatever you want to call it.
They blew up in the truck, and then the zombies started feasting on their internal organs.
Yeah.
They had some cooked liver.
Yeah,
some cooked intestines.
Yeah, they were just mealing. And you got to think at that point, shit like that hadn't been on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Even coming out of, like, the European like movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that was just, I mean, that kind of is what separates that from all the zombie movies that came before. Because you got to think, with Night of the Living Dead, zombies were handled much, much different. They were usually all voodoo based. Like they were voodoo based. Like, they would kill people, but they weren't eating people.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing when you think that, like, Romero and Russo, because he wrote the script with it, they basically tapped into something that became the fucking norm for zombies. Because, like, zombie movies after that, they all fucking were slow. They all ate people or ate flesh or whatever. And if you got bit, you turned into a zombie.
Right.
Like, all that shit came from Night of the Living Dead.
Right on. Hey, there was another, earlier in the film, kind of at the beginning when they first get to the house, Barbara goes upstairs, and there's a scene where as she gets to the top of the steps, she comes across a dead person or whatever, but it's like their face is kind of like, it's kind of like a little bit of a skeleton or something, I guess.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it seems like this might be I don't know, I don't think you were seeing a lot of that sort of thing before this came out,
That is kind of like the moment in the movie where you realize it's not going to be playing around.
Yeah.
Like it's obviously when Heinzman attacks Russ Steiner's character in the cemetery, like, he gets his head cracked on like a tombstone or whatever, but like you don't really get anything graphic. And when you see like a fucking skull face, like the only thing I can think it could be a slight homage to is maybe when they, like, the scene in Psycho. Sorry if I'm spoiling Psycho, but you should have seen it by now. But when they whip around Mother and she's a fucking mummified skeleton. It's kind of like that kind of shock level.
Yeah.
Different intent, obviously, but like it kind of lets you know, like, shit's gonna get raw. And there's little moments in there where, like, Ben's fucking bludgeoning fucking zombies with a fucking, like, tire iron and shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's brutal too. He impales somebody with the tire iron. It's nice. It's brutal.
Yeah, he literally brains them. But like, yeah, like zombies were slow and, like, obviously through voodoo and stuff like that. So this, because what's implied is like there was some kind of satellite that crashed and radiation's what's causing this. Although they never really confirm it.
Right on. Kind of like, kind of similar to like Roadside Picnic and Stalker and that sort of thing, where it's like, it's kind of, it's ambiguous as far as what actually happened, but here's the results.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
I mean, obviously Romero's been honest in saying, like, one of the big influences on this movie was I Am Legend, the Richard Matheson story, which, eventually became, Last Man on Earth, Omega Man, and things like that.
Yeah.
But, there's enough original flip on it that comes out. And obviously the zombies were inspired by Herk Harvey's Carnival of Souls. Like, Romero liked that look and translated to that movie. So, which is kind of a direct lineage, although the ghouls or whatever in Carnival of Souls be figments of imagination, real, creatures come from the netherworld to take her back to the realm of the dead or whatever. I mean, these zombies don't fuck around. They are menacing. They're mean. They like to party. When they get in the house, they're just wrecking shit for the sake of it.
If I remember, and I think you've mentioned this even in previous episodes when we talked about Night of the Living Dead before, but I believe one of the actors, I think the first zombie we see on screen, didn't he go on to make like an unofficial sequel or something like that?
Yeah, that was Bill Heinzman, who was, friends with Romero and everyone. Like, Heinzman actually was, he worked a lot with Romero early on. He was the cinematographer on The Crazies. Like, he was really tied into the Image 10 stuff. So, in the 80s, Bill Heinzman got an offer to kind of do his own sequel to Night of the Living Dead, where he basically plays the same lead ghoul from Night of the Living Dead, reprises his role. It's called The Flesh Eater. We actually talked about it on one of the, I think it's on Halloween episode 1, which I think is, or on Halloween part 1, which is episode 18 in the Cinematic Void podcast. That one's still available publicly, but if you want to hear the rest of the On Halloween series, those are all only on Patreon now. So
there you go.
Getting them plugs in. But if you want to hear us talk about Bill Heinzman, Flesh Eater at length, we can talk about that. One of the things I should mention is that Vince Stravinsky, who is the sharpshooter at the end of Night of the Living Dead, plays the same role in Flesh Eater and just fucking...
Oh, nice.
Both times he snipes someone that was still living that isn't a zombie.
Oh, shit.
Although what happens in Night of the Living Dead is a little more like iconic and devastating and really, know. So the one thing I do want to talk about is like listening to the score, because it's all library cues and it's needle drop and stuff like that. And you were pointing out like, the orchestral stuff and the synth stuff. And like, I think it just takes real talent to like listen to a music cue and like, that's going to work here. Or that's going to work there. And like the really dirgy electronic stuff that happens in that movie is like, that shit's like creepy.
Yeah. Kind of, I don't know. I mean, I could be way off here, but like it's like the more orchestral stuff, makes me think this is like still like an older film. But then like the synth stuff on the soundtrack kind of brings me to like what feels like a new era. Like, like now when I think of zombie films, like the other Romero stuff, like you think of Goblin, you think of like very synth based, progged out, like that's like the soundtrack for the 70s zombie movie, or like, a lot of that stuff. I don't know. So it's just kind of, this feels like the transition into like the new era.
I mean, it really was, because you got to think most horror movies, you had a bunch of the Corman, Poe stuff. You had like, the monster movies of the 50s. You had Universal monsters. Like, there's a lot of horror movies, but like Night of the Living Dead changed everything because movies got meaner. They got more violent. This movie has a fucking mean streak in it.
Yeah.
Not even just with the zombies, with the people. And like, as much as like Ben's kind of de facto hero in the movie, he's also kind of an asshole.
Yeah, he's kind of a dick.
I mean, that's what's really incredible, is just like how all these people are awful, and maybe if they work together, and that's kind of the greater point of the movies, maybe if people just work together, they would all be alive. But because
some people want to go to the basement, some people want to go upstairs, some people want to fucking go outside and start fires around the house.
I mean, yeah. The irony of Mr. Cooper saying the safest place is the basement and being right, it's kind of like it's just a great moment. And it's like, Ben, but also I think Ben took satisfaction when Cooper like got, was dying and his daughter was eating his arm and shit and turned him into a zombie. When he gets up, because he's a zombie now, and Ben shoots him, there's a little satisfaction there.
Oh, and the mom.
Oh, yeah.
That's Jamila Jamil. That's who I would have play her.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm going with the Good Place cast again.
Yeah. Let's talk about that scene, because that's another gnarly scene when the little girl kills her mom. Like, it is just...
When it shows the mom with, like, the... It's not really it's like a spade or something. I don't know.
It's like, it's a little thing you use for gardening. Like, my mom had one kid, and I remember when I saw that movie, like, every time I see one of those tools, all I think about is Night of the Living Dead and that little girl with it.
Yeah. It's just like there's kind of like it pulls into like the mom, like with it just like buried in her chest.
Yeah.
And it kind of like stays on her for a moment. And it's like, again, just like very mean, very violent.
Yeah. Like that death scene is probably like the most brutal in there, because it's just like, it's played by Marilyn Eastman, who also has a second role. She plays one of the zombies outside. She's the one that's like hugging a tree and grabs like a bug and eats it. I mean, I think a few of them, like, use the Evil Dead term, fake Shempton, like played multiple roles just to kind of fill up, zombies. But like that death scene is it's just unnerving, because she like, basically comes in and sees her fucking eating like Mr. Cooper. And then the little girl's like coming at her. The little girl's named Karen. So is she the first like bad Karen in cinema history? I don't know. That's a bad joke. I tried. I bombed. It happens. But like, it's like, it's a mom that's trying to reconcile with her fucking daughter that's about to kill her. And because she can't reconcile, and like, you probably could have disarmed her.
But she just killed the daughter first.
Yeah, or they could have left her when she got bit. But they're like, oh, doctors will help. I mean, if they had only seen the movie that they were making, they would have known better. But the other thing about this movie is like when you get to the posse, and you brought it up, and I want you to share the point, is like where you were comparing like the posse is just like the zombies marching through.
They're doing like the little, they're kind of like the, I don't know, what you call it, like kind of like a search party.
Yeah.
Spreading out. And it looks very much like when the zombies are just slowly coming across the hill.
Yeah, and then they're just instead just fucking popping zombies.
Yeah, true.
Like there was a line that was said when they're talking to the head of the hunting party, which like I feel like is the best line in the movie. Is like, yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up or whatever the way he says it. It's almost like a really human reaction, like an honest reaction to it. But it's just like they're like, but as they're popping zombies, all right, that's another one for the fire.
Yeah.
Now, before we get to our compare and contrast to Night and Carnival, we should talk a little bit about the 1990 or 1990, I forget what year it was. It was in the 90s, the Night of the Living Dead remake, which was basically made because the Night of the Living Dead famously ended up in the public domain because there's no copyright on it.
Mm-hmm.
And basically tons of people would just bootleg prints, bootleg, VHS, DVDs, all kinds of stuff. Like, so basically Romero and Image 10 lost all their money that they invested in it. They just never got it back.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because there was no copyright at the end of the movie. With the Night of the Living Dead remake that Tom Savini directed, Romero wrote the script. Like, the whole point was like for everyone involved to make some money.
Yeah.
That they were owed. And unfortunately, I don't think the Night of the Living Dead remake did too hot when it came out. But it's really interesting. I haven't watched it in a while, but it's got Tony Todd playing the Ben role. Bill Moseley plays like the coming to get you Barbara guy,
Yeah.
Johnny, that's the character's name. But like, yeah, it's kind of interesting that they tried it. And I know Romero flipped some stuff. There's like empathy towards the zombies because the hunting party is like just brutalizing zombies, which is stuff he would probably kind of look in more towards with Land of the Dead when he got there. And maybe a little bit in Day of the Dead, just like, a different approach. And plus Barbara becomes the strong character and Ben remains strong, but an asshole and kind of flips where things go. I mean, you were saying you hadn't seen it since like, when did you see it? Like maybe late 90s, 2000s?
I saw it around then. I was at a friend's house, like at a party where we were all very high, like very stoned. And I remember enjoying it. Like it was just a very kind of an overwhelming experience at the time.
Just sensory overload?
Yeah, just totally, man. And I remember thinking it was awesome. And maybe even at the time just thinking like that blows away the original. I don't know if that's still and again, it's been a long ass time since I've seen that one, but that's surely not true, but it's just a different era of film where they could truly do a lot more crazy shit. And it's Tom Savini on the effects and shit like that, and he directed it, right?
I don't think he did the effect. I think maybe K&B ended up doing the effects or something like that.
But I mean, if you're doing effects and Tom Savini directed your film,
you better
fuck step it up.
Yeah, your effects need to be on fucking point.
Yeah. So a lot of people like to just turn that, like when talking about like what is this film about, and it's very quickly turned into like a racial thing. And that's fair due to the era that it came out. Like it's during civil rights and like Vietnam, and there's a lot of things going on in the world. And I'm curious, like I wonder what George Romero's intentions really were. Like, what do the zombies truly represent at this point in time in culture? And like, who was the bad guy?
I mean, the thing is, it's like the zombies didn't have a choice in who they became, but the humans had a choice in what they do.
Yeah.
And also, when you look at the end credits, which I think your comment was the end credits was the most horrifying and like, most unsettling thing in the movie, really. Because the way it's staged is like all those like, definitely race riots. Like it's definitely hearkening to that.
Yes, very much so.
I've heard different opinions on where like if this was intentional or this was just a byproduct of like cultural osmosis that they were making and just kind of like zeroed in on like something that was happening.
I mean, again, like he wasn't cast because he was black. He was cast because he was great for the role.
Exactly.
Would that scene have remained had it been a white guy that got shot at the end?
I mean, would it have the same impact?
Certainly not.
No. And I think that that's kind of a testament to Romero, and like, he became very culturally and politically conscious, especially with all of his movies moving forward.
Yeah.
Now, before we begin our Night of the Living Dead Carnival Souls compare and contrast, I feel like I should mention Return of the Living Dead, because people are like, you talked about Flesh Eater, you didn't talk about Return of the Living Dead? So we'll talk about it, because
Is that what they sound like?
Yes, that's exactly what they sound. I don't know if that sound like, but that's how you sound like in my head. All you who would be complaining about that. But, Return of the Living Dead, it was originally a book written by John A. Russo, who was co-writer of Night of the Living Dead. And, because everyone, didn't make any money off it, everyone was figuring out how to monetize off of it. You know, obviously Romero went on to do Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, you know, that kind of stuff. So Russo wrote a book, Return of the Living Dead, and then eventually became a movie directed by Dan O'Bannon. Now, the book is actually closer to what, you know, a sequel to Night of the Living Dead and more of a follow-up, whereas Dan O'Bannon is like, I'm going to turn this on its head, which, like, you know, I'm going to say he popularized a different strand of zombies, which are the running, I want to eat your brain zombies. That all comes from Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Although, you know, to be fair and give some props to Umberto Lenzi, even though he claims it's not a zombie movie, Nightmare City was probably the first, like, running zombie movie. But, you know, popularized and first are two different things. But, you know, Return of the Living Dead is connected to that whole universe, so...
I mean, it's also... I mean, to me, it's one of the greatest zombie films of all time. Like, easily. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's right up there with Romero's best zombie work.
Yeah, I mean, I love Return of the Living Dead. It's a 5-star movie to me. Like, it's, you know, punk soundtrack, you know, great jokes.
It's the fun 80s neon version of Dawn, you know? That it's the fun 80s neon version of it that I kind of wish Day was, you know?
Well, it's funny because...
Day is the stuffy, boring...
Well, you got to think, in 1985, 3 zombie movies came out. Day of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead, and Reanimator. And
Reanimator, more the kind of that same, again, just the using the 80s kind of aesthetic to its strengths.
Yeah, it's again, I don't want to get too much into Day of the Dead, but, like, you know, out of the 3, it's like my least favorite. But I do think Day of the Dead...
That's probably the prevailing opinion.
Yeah. Well, no, there's people that will stand on their high horse and say Day of the Dead is better than Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, come on, guy. Come on, friend.
I will say this, effects-wise, Day of the Dead's superior in both those movies. That's like Tom Savini's, like, tour de force is Day of the Dead. But I'm not questioning that, but, like, as a movie, no. You can have your opinion, and you can love your opinion and stand by your opinion, and I respect that, but you're fucking wrong. It is not better than Dawn or Night of the Living Dead or Return of the Living Dead or Reanimator. I guess that's my opinion. And
that's what's up.
That's what's up. All right. So now a little compare and contrast. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you know, both Romero and Herk Harvey, you know, making shorts, industrials, commercials, that kind of stuff. And the pivot here is that after they both released their movie that fell in the public domain and they basically made no money off it, you know, they went on different paths. Herk went back to working for Centron and, like, continued making industrials, made Shake Hands with Danger and things like that. And I know there was a few attempts, but he never made another feature film again. Whereas Romero, actually, the next thing he made as a feature film was There's Always Vanilla, which was like this art house movie. Not horror, because he wanted to, like, do something completely different. And didn't do well. And then he just kept making movies. So that's kind of, maybe that's the takeaway from this. Like, this is my opinion on these movies, and I'm going to kind of get into it, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. So, which movie's the better movie? Completely subjective. I think Carnival of Souls is the better made movie, top to bottom. I think the cinematography's better. I think the way it's shot, like the soundtrack, just the feeling, the vibes, like, I think it's a superior film as a film. But with that said, I think Night of the Living Dead is the more important movie. Where I think, you know, cultural impact, it changed the genre. As much as I love Carnival of Souls, you know, it inspired Night of the Living Dead, but it wasn't changing the genre that came after it.
It's a little too smart for its own good, I think, is kind of my opinion, is that Carnival of Souls it's trying to say a lot more, even, or it's painting with, like, you know, broader strokes.
Yeah, I think because Carnival of Souls had an outright art house aspirations instead of a exploitation aspiration, is what hindered it. And it's like, you know, look upon in the horror genre. There's people that love this movie, and I love it, and I think you're now a fan of it too.
Oh yeah, like, I think that the reason that Carnival of Souls wouldn't be as popular or as important as Night of the Living Dead is also the same reasons why I probably like it and like it more.
Yeah,
for that matter.
It's just like, it's, you know, the fact they were talking about Bergman, Cocteau, and, like, all the European art house stuff. And I feel like that movie, if it came from Europe and it was, like, subtitled in a different language, I think Carnival of Souls would have had a different, you know, perspective or view from people much sooner than where it is now.
You'd see it screened at the Cinematheque more often.
Yeah. I mean, it's played a few times. I mean,
by your hand.
Well, I was the last one to play, but before that, they had actually Candace Hilgoss came out for a screening, and you know all that. That was when Criterion did their restoration.
Very nice.
And I think I know you got spine numbers and all that. I think these are both worthy of being in the Criterion collection if we're gonna go on those terms.
Yeah.
But I think with Night is, despite things, I think this comes down to like who wanted it more. Romero wanted to be a fucking filmmaker. He had that drive, where I think Herk might have had a great sense of technical skills and a good eye and all that stuff. It just like he didn't want it bad enough. Like I think Romero went to serious debt making movies. Like There's Always Vanilla was pretty much just in obscurity upon release. You had Season the Witch, aka Hungry Wives, that like kind of teetered around. Didn't really get to be a well-known movie until after Dawn of the Dead, and they retitled it as Season the Witch to capitalize on the horror. I mean, there's not really horror elements. There's witchcraft and stuff in it, but like that's not the primary like selling point. It's a drama, with occult elements. Then you had The Crazies, which was like kind of a harkening back to Night of the Living Dead. It's kind of, I always look at The Crazies as like he had to make The Crazies get to Dawn of the Dead. It's like the perfect transitional from one to the other. And like, that movie didn't have a big release when it came out. It just kind of got buried. And it wasn't until he got involved with Richard P. Rubenstein, they started making documentaries. They made that OJ documentary in the 70s. OJ, The Juice is on the Loose.
That he is.
We'll leave it at that. About his football days. Let's be clear here, because it's the 70s. Richard kind of like, in some ways, reined in George and like kind of got things financially stable and fundraising, putting movies together and getting them released by distributors and all that. Because like from Martin through Creepshow, they all worked together, and that was like probably his biggest run as a filmmaker. And like I think the difference is like Romero wanted this more. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to make his own movies and wanted to make his own vision. But like he figured out how to make it work, where Harvey, like, maybe some ego, maybe just feeling wounded from, like, not really, I want to say the movie was a failure, but, like, when you put your literal soul in a movie and you watch it get basically stolen from you and you can't, there's nothing you can take from it. It's just this piece of art out in the world that you don't get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. It kind of, like, made him stay in a place where he would, he gets to still make films. Yeah. Maybe not, narrative, commercial, feature-length films. But he didn't, it killed his artistic aspiration where, like, Night of the Living Dead and all the fuckery they have with the copyright and all that stuff, like, Romero just kept pushing forward, Image 10 crew, like, kind of fell apart and, like, went their separate ways and all that. Like, Romero just kept going. And, it's about perseverance. Like, filmmaking's not easy. There's a reason why there's a ton of regional horror filmmakers, and most of them only make one movie and that's it, and they're gone. Usually they get fucked over by distributors, or like, that's usually what happens. Yeah. But it's like certain filmmakers like are able to like crawl out of it. And I also think because Night of the Living Dead fell in the public domain, and so did Carnival of Souls, but I think the time that Night of the Living Dead came out and when it fell in the public domain, as like culture was changing, it's what allowed the movie to grow. Is playing TV, even though it's graphically violent. It was still playing theaters and drive-ins and all that. And yeah, they weren't making any money, but like you could still see directed by George A. Romero in the fucking credits. And, it introduced a lot of like future filmmakers saw it. If there wasn't Night of the Living Dead, would there have been a Last House on the Left? Would there have been a Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Obviously Dario Argento had heard of Romero and wanted, like, he specifically wanted Romero to do a sequel to Night of the Living Dead because they saw money. It's like, you should do this. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like, personally, and I rank both these 5-star movies. I know you have your different ratings or whatever, but for me, they're both 5-star movies for different reasons. Night of the Living Dead's 5-star because it was a movie that introduced me to a whole world that, like, I wouldn't be sitting here talking in front of a microphone now if I hadn't seen it or pushed myself to see it. And Carnival Souls is a 5-star movie because it's a movie that I just feel something deep in my own soul by watching it. And there's something very relatable to the whole thing. And just like, again, this was my movie of the pandemic that I watched on a fucking never-ending loop.
Yeah.
Just trying to find understanding of the world outside and what I was going through internally. So I think, movie from my childhood that build up the foundation for me wanting to get into film, call films, filmmaking, all that stuff. And a movie that I could relate to in my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we stand. Do you have any closing thoughts on either of these?
I was apprehensive to watch either of these, but I really enjoyed them both. And I've seen Night of the Living Dead before, but I feel like I have a new understanding of the film, and I'm glad we watched it. And I'm glad that Zac Efron and all those folks are in it.
It's Tom and Judy is that couple, the one that gets fried.
Right
I don't know why I was blanking on his name. It was just, I don't know. Sometimes as you get older, your brain doesn't quite work.
Carnival Souls is awesome, and I will most likely be adding that to my personal Criterion collection soon. So thanks for turning me on to it.
Oh, no problem, man. That's what I hope to do occasionally. It can't be all movies that you hate that I make you watch.
Thank God not everything is Jack-o'-lantern or whatever. Hack-o'-lantern.
Hack-o'-lantern, Jacko, and...
Yeah. Oh, God, I'll never forgive you for those. I'll never forgive you, dude. That was mean.
Well, there's still plenty of podcasts to come, so... I was deliberately trying to do more on the artsy Criterion side for you.
Because, well, you don't have to cater to me here, but I'm grateful that we got to watch these.
Yeah. So, and we're going to take one last commercial break here, but when we return, it'll be Rewatch and Listen here on the Cinematic Void Podcast.
Total terror. Night of the living dead, the dead who live on living flesh, the dead whose haunted souls hunt the living whose bodies are the only food for these ungodly creatures. Night of the living dead. A bizarre adventure in fear. An experience in shock more shattering than your strangest nightmare. Night of the living dead. A night with the dead who cannot die. A night of total terror.
Welcome back. It's now time for on the Cinematic Void Podcast, where we talk about all the things we've been reading, watching, and or listening to since the last time we recorded a podcast. All right, Nick, what have you been reading, watching, and or listening to?
I've been, start with reading here. Now.
Right here, right now?
Right here, right now. I recently been dipping back into that House of Psychotic Women book by Kayla Janice, who we had on the podcast. I don't remember the episode number, but...
Episode 30, I think it's 41.
There you go, 41. But you can just find it if you search her name.
Yeah.
Due to the films that I've been watching this past week. So let's jump into that. Did I talk about three women on the last episode?
You talked about three women the last time we did.
I haven't watched a ton of shit lately, but that's part of what I've been watching. So I watched Three Women, as I said in the last episode, and then I went to the boys' Bible study. We're doing a series for the American Cinematheque called Friend of the Fest, and it's a bunch of podcasters, not us, that did a bunch of programming, and I projected some of those. So there's cool stuff. There's actually a bunch of cool stuff because it was like completely schizophrenic, like very different than our typical programming because it was like way the fuck all over the place. Kind of cool, but also kind of weird. But I went to the boys' Bible study episode, I guess you could say. And they screened the Kevin Sorbo's Let There Be Light. And it was fucking, dude, it was hilarious. It was such a good time. And before I get into that, on the Cinematech Instagram, there's a bunch of people just like raising a complete stink over the screening. And it was just kind of insane. Like it's just like a click or two and you could figure out that this is all, wrapped in fucking irony that they're lampooning this film, but nope, you just gotta react. I gotta be the first person to say something and make sure that everybody knows how I feel. Like, dude, as far as politics go, I think like most of the people that we know that are involved in like the arts or whatever, right? Like, I think we're all like kind of in the same realm politically for the most part, you know what I mean? Like on a spectrum, but I don't know, man. But the kind of people that just feel like they have to be like the first one to be like, oh, it's crazy, I don't know, man. Just people just jump on that, and it kind of drives me nuts, dude.
I mean, it's always the thing with the internet is like people rather be outraged than do research.
Yeah, or like, no one's like, I don't know. It's like it's bad to be earnest, and it's bad to like say that you like things. You know what I mean? That's the state of the internet now. It's like it's all about just like negativity, and I don't know. This is a very trite observation. There's just, I don't know what I'm getting at here, but
the bigger point is that like most of the people that commented on that post aren't local, never been to an American Cinematheque screening, probably don't even live in fucking LA, obviously.
Probably so, yeah.
So it's
except for Wiener Dog from the Todd Solondz film.
Oh, yeah. But, the thing is just like, people just want to be outraged for shit. And then clearly, if you've ever listened to the boys' Bible study or just looked at their Instagram and saw what they're fucking doing,
it takes 2 seconds.
It's literally, there's no championing Kevin Sorbo as a fucking artistic filmmaker.
However, I saw this film and I champion Kevin Sorbo as an artistic filmmaker. This fucking film is absolutely fucking insane. And it's so nuts, dude. It's so nuts. It's The Room. It's Birdemic. It's, it's one of those, it's a bad good film or a good bad film.
I'm assuming it's one of those things where like, there's people involved that understand how a movie's made, but they kind of like
very well made. Very well put together.
The thing about bad movies is like the reason why certain bad movies like live on is because they're usually a good crew behind it. Mm-hmm. And all the bad shit is because like no one could control that other than the filmmaker. Look at The Room. The reason why The Room is memorable because like everyone that Tommy Wiseau paid and hired on it were a professional, like at least the crew in that stance.
Yeah.
And because there's this professionalism with just fucking pure, like, just lunacy, insanity, dog shit going on, it's what makes the movie work.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's how this is.
It is. And it's this whole fucking thing. Like, the plot is like, he was his whole family was like Christian, and then his son dies in like a crazy accident, and then he becomes this like famous atheist author that's like always like perpetually on a book tour, and then these various set of circumstances like of course will bring him back around to the Lord.
Yeah.
And dude, there's this scene where he dies in the movie and like goes to like not heaven but like goes to some kind of like limbo, and like he's basically in like the Fortress of Solitude, and like everything around him is like his dead son, like in like various, like, dude, it's so crazy, dude. It's so sick.
So his dead son becomes Marlon Brando in the Superman movies.
But then his son also like appears to him in that place, and like tells him like, oh, you have to go back, and like, and then he, becomes born again, and like, dude, it's fucking crazy. Like, man, I'm so glad that I saw it like in a theater, in a room full of people just like howling. It was so fun, dude. It was so fun. So that was great. Shout out to Boys Bible Study and Ash and Julian and Scott. These guys are great. So that was a lot of fun. But so also this week I bought and watched Persona, Bergman. Holy fuck, man.
Yeah, I mean, following up your Three Women watch, like, you might as well watch the genesis of all this shit.
Yeah. I guess next up is, like, I need to rewatch Mulholland Drive.
You need to rewatch Mulholland Drive. You need to rewatch Robert Altman's Images since you...
Oh, yeah.
Since you love Three Women. I think you'll have a different perspective on it now.
Cool, hell yeah. But, yeah, man, Persona is a fucking... I mean, like, you know, obviously, like, it's you know, it's... Persona's not a secret. You know, like, everybody knows about this film, but, like, goddamn, man, I'm glad I finally got around to watching it. And, yeah, man, it's one of those films that's just, like, you're a different person after you watch it.
Oh, it fucks you up. Like, the last, you know, I won't want to say last time, but the last time, like, I probably watched it on Blu-ray when I got it, but the last time I ever watched it in the theater was when the Cinematheque did the big Bergman fucking retrospective. I think it was for his centennial or something like that. And the only one I wanted to go see was Persona. And that was like, because I knew, like, if this is going to be the one I'm going to sit down and watch, I'm not going to want to watch it any more Bergman after that, because it's such a devastating mind fucker soul scorcher of a movie. It's just it's so amazing and devastating, and it will fuck you up.
Yeah, dude.
And that's what I want out of certain kind of movies. I want to be fucked up and just feel like, you know, I felt like shit after watching it. Like, it just, you question yourself, like, morally, spiritually, like, you question just life in general after it. Which, the segue here is for the next episode, where we're actually, you know, is Persona a horror movie? I think there's a lot of horror elements in it. There's a lot of psychological horror elements in it for sure. And we're going to do an episode. We're going to talk about Persona, because I feel like it's one of the most important movies that, like, you know, for lots of genres, be it art house or horror, that it has its fucking threads in.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about Persona in length in our next episode for our spooky season.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that. So I will not elaborate on that any further. But yeah, big fan. Like, straight up, I will say. I mean, it's just instantly in, like, one of my top films of all time. Like, I cannot wait to watch it again. And I'm going to watch it probably 1 or 2 times before we watch it for the episode. You know, I mean, goddamn, man. What a motherfucker. All right, for listen, I've been listening to a bunch of, I'll kind of maybe getting excited about. So I think I think the Double Life record is going to drop on, I think we're going to drop our first single on the 6th. So I don't know when that episode came out, Jim, if it already came out.
And by the time this episode
that was like 6 months ago that we fucking did that. You made me talk about it, and I'm pissed because it was way too early.
It's like a month ago.
Yeah.
And when this episode comes out, it will already be out.
Yeah, this is annoying. Yes, this is annoying. That's what I'm saying. But I think the single is going to drop on the 6th of September, and then I think the full EP is going to drop on the 15th. So maybe this will be out before the 15th. I don't know, since Jim wants me to do half-hour ads for something that's not coming out for 6 months.
There you go.
There you go. Look, I appreciate it and all.
Look,
with bad timing.
at any point, someone can listen to that episode and be like, "Oh yeah, I should go check this out." And they'll be like, "Oh, it's already September. I can go get the album now."
Okay, fair enough. Right on.
Look,
I'm just trying to find ways to be mad about things. It's fine.
Why are you mad about putting out a fucking record?
I'm very angry about putting out a record. But my point is, so I've been, because that record is so kind of 90s heavy, I'll say. So I've just been listening to a bunch of, like, 90s rock, just kind of in anticipation of this starting to come out. But so this week I listened to a bunch of, like, Sebadoh, Bake Sale, their only good record. Spoon, Series of Sneaks, that's like maybe a little more like early 2000s, but that shit rocks. Texas is the Reason, on Revelation Records. Fucking love that shit, man. I guess it's just, like, the LP is kind of a collection of the singles, and I don't know, it's all, you can find that shit on fucking Spotify or whatever. That shit's rules. Sunny Day Real Estate Diary, I saw them at Riot Fest last year. That was amazing. I think they just played Baltimore, so a bunch of our friends went, like Mike Thompson went.
I originally, Leslie and I were talking about, like, flying out to go. Tickets were a little pricey.
Little pricey?
Pricey. It with the incorporating the flight out and all that, it was just like, it was fucking a lot. So, but I'm gonna see Quicksand, which is another 90s band.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be good. I don't think I've ever actually seen Quicksand, but I've seen Rival Schools a couple times. Also been listening to like No Knife, Nirvana, Beeswax, South of Boredom, Beeswax from Norway. Just all the great records from the 90s. Bunch of Catherine Wheels, Star Market, Swerve Driver, fucking Shiner. I've been hanging out, dude.
Hanging out, listening to the guitar music. It's funny.
Listen to that guitar rock. Yeah, when we started this podcast, I did not listen to guitars.
I think the very first episode, I don't listen to music with guitars.
I don't listen to music.
70 plus episodes later, look what.
Have you ever met someone that doesn't listen to music?
Yes.
That's a weird. I don't know what that is. I don't know what happened to you.
Like, it's actually weird to me than not watching movies or not being into movies or something. When
right,
you're
like people are just like, oh, I don't know, I don't watch TV. It's like, no, do you don't like movies? I'm like, oh, I don't watch stuff. Like, that's pretty weird, but not listen to music. That's some real alien shit. You are an NPC.
Yeah, you have to be, because like I as much as I love movies, music is probably more important to my daily intake of like what I do. Like, I'll listen to music like randomly at times. I'll listen to it before bed. I'll listen to it because I want to fucking listen to music, you know?
The man likes music.
I like fucking music there.
But yeah, man, I don't know. It's weird. I like all the music. I forget where I was going with this. Doesn't matter. I guess I'm done.
You guess you're done. Yeah, we were just talking about people that don't like music. We're like, yeah, music's not really for me.
That's weird, dude.
Yeah, it is. Like, yeah,
it's really weird.
Alien,
it's like, even, I don't know, you know,
Alien or a fucking angelic creature from a Kevin Sorbo fucking religious movie.
True.
Because they don't like secular music.
True. I listened to some MXPX this week, so there you go.
There you go.
Starflyer 59.
And for those you don't know, Christian punk.
There's some good Christian bands.
Zayo.
Yeah.
Although I think there was always a debate if Zayo actually were, or they were like,
we're just trying to get some money, trying to get those big Christian bucks.
Yeah, it's like, how else do we get away with being this heavy and fucking mean sounding? Jesus. Could be. I don't know. That was always the rumor.
I think they love it. Bathed in the blood of the Lamb.
Man, Christians.
That's probably a Zayo song.
Probably is. Like, you know, it's weird that some, you know, segments of the Christianity are all about the blood. Or like, we don't like, you know, violence on TV, but goddamn it, biblical story where someone's getting their fucking throat slit for Jesus, dying for your sins in a bloody bloodbath. Ask Mel Gibson. Actually, the one thing, just before I get to my rewatch, when Boys Bible Study, they had a little trouble picking their movie because like all these Christian movie distributors are like just fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they'll do a premiere and then they'll go direct the video and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I thought it'd been funny if they did Last Temptation of Christ, because that is the ultimate Christian movie.
That, Passion of the Christ. Or they could have just done that, what's that recent groomer movie?
the fucking, like, what is it? I don't know what I can't remember.
I can't remember what the fuck it's called.
Yeah, the one that's about, like, you know, was it white slave trades or like child trafficking or whatever it is?
Something.
You know, it's funny, like, I guess they weren't expecting to make a hit out of it. Now they're fighting over who actually owns the rights to it because they're trying to make a sequel and they can't.
Oh, hilarious.
Because the rights are so divided up. So, like, if you have a plan on, like, exploiting something, know how to make your money and not fuck each other up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I've not seen the movie. I can't remember what it's fucking called, but
yeah, we in fact, we know so little about it. We're gonna have to cut this whole thing because we don't know the name. We don't know anything about it,
or just leave it because, like, yeah,
you know what it's called. We don't.
Yeah, if you know what it is, just actually
just yell at us. Just yell out loud now.
Yeah, don't tweet it at us because that will probably bring on.
Oh god,
that will bring on a segment of population we don't want to interact
just
with.
Tweet Showtimes at me.
Showtimes. I'm sure it's playing at the.
It was playing in Glendale. I mean, I looked it up. Like,
you looked it up. Like,
like for someone who we've already mentioned on today's podcast, and I were talking about going to see it, and someone else who I already mentioned on today's podcast did see it and said it was a piece of crap.
I mean, I don't have high expectations.
Sometimes you got to just go see something crazy.
You know, I understand both sides, but I know there's certain people like, why are you making something a profit? But it's just like, at the same time, it's like, you know, it's an interior experience.
I'm sure
but then at the same time, it's like, I know a lot of you fucking like still have Disney Plus and all that, and they're currently fucking over all the writers and actors.
I know you got a cell phone.
Yeah, you know, exploitation and supporting things you don't like come in many forms. You can choose what you do, but you can't pretend like no matter just living life now, you're supporting something that's fucking terrible.
Right. The only way to not do that is if you go live in a shed and build bombs and send them to universities.
And this is a reminder that this podcast is on Apple Podcasts as well. And Spotify. Both not very good companies, which hopefully they don't pull the podcast for me saying aloud, but they know this.
They know they suck.
They have to know they suck. But anyway, for my read, watch, and listen. Read, I actually have a title because I made myself fucking read something. So, I guess last year, after years as a kid and having that fucking Mysteries of the Unknown commercials stuck in my head and playing during the Cinematis movie, I bought some of the books.
Oh, nice. I love those books, man.
They're fucking great. And I've kind of thumbed through them and looked at the pictures, but I actually sat down and started reading one of them. The one I'm reading is Mind Over Matter, which is kind of like more the psychic and like, that kind of stuff. I'm not deep into it because I just started, but like, I have these books. It's like as a kid, I wanted them. As an adult, I bought them because I really wanted them as a kid. I need to actually fucking read them. Otherwise, why do I own them? It's going to become another useless thing that I feel like I have to get rid of, like Blu-rays or whatever.
Right.
So I'm going to start reading them, and I will give some more in-depth notes as I'm reading them next time.
Those types of books are really cool, though, because it's the kind of thing that you could just pick up at any moment and just like flip to the next section and jump into it and read about the next weird-ass thing that you've never heard of.
Exactly. So I'm actually stoked to really dive in. For Watch, I finally saw the Sergio Martino, Edwidge Fenech like mini-series that they made in the 90s for Italian TV called Private Crime. Severin put this out on Blu-ray. And, it's kind of billed as the Italian Twin Peaks meets Giallo kind of thing.
So sick.
And it's fucking good.
Yeah.
Like,
how many episodes?
It's 4 episodes. They're 90-minute episodes. So it's like 4 mini movies.
And is it like it's tied up at the end? Like
it gets tied. It ties everything up together at the end. And like there's some music cues that are very Twin Peaksy and and there's some moments in there that are, but like, it's really good. Like surprisingly good. Like maybe a few twists don't quite land, but like overall it's kind of great. Edwidge Fenech, who was like probably in her 50s when she was starting, like just still looks incredible. Like she just doesn't age. Martino directs the shit out. They shot that on 16 millimeter too.
Cool.
TV. And like, I don't know. This is one of my favorite things that I got to watch. I know there's bootlegs and like rips of this that were floating around for years, but I just never saw it. So shout out to Severin Films for putting out an incredible set with all 4 episodes. Another TV show I was watching, this is kind of rewatched because I haven't watched it in forever. On Tubi was The Critic with John Lovitz as Jay Sherman, the film critic. I hadn't watched that probably. It used to play Comedy Central all the time. And like a lot of things I watched growing up, I thought there would be like 5-10 episodes or 5-10 seasons or something like that. There's only like 2 seasons of The Critic before it got canceled.
It stinks.
Yeah. So I kind of rewatched it. Is weird like how many of those episodes, just because I saw them so much on Comedy Central or Fox or when they originally played, it's like, oh, I know these all by heart. Like when the episode started, it's like, I don't remember this one. And then the second it kind of kicks in, it's like, oh yeah, I do remember this one. On Netflix, I watched the documentary on Nolan Ryan called Facing Nolan. It might be one of my favorite documentaries I've seen in a long time. It's just fucking good. It gets to like, breaking all the baseball records and like just him as a person. And of course has a nice segment when he beats the shit out of Robin Ventura when he charged the mound.
That's like perfect. When I was in my baseball card era, like Nolan Ryan was like the guy.
Oh, he was the guy. Like, he was a spokesman for Advil and other products. And like, I don't know, he's an interesting guy. And it's just like, it's kind of sad how he ended because like, I think he played for 27 seasons or years or whatever. And like, he threw a pitch and like something.
He played for 27 years?
Yeah. And like, he threw like really his 7th shutout. He threw really late in his career. Like, insanely late. Like, people were like, oh shit, is he gonna fucking do this like at this point in his career? But then body kind of gave out towards the end. I think he ripped a tendon in his elbow and his pitching arm, and that was it. But he was still throwing fucking heat late in life and all that. I mean, I'm not a baseball guy, but like, growing up, sort of like, you knew about dinosaurs, you knew about Jose Canseco and people like that. And you knew about Nolan Ryan. It was just like a cultural thing.
Oh yeah.
You couldn't help but know, because like I don't even think baseball players as like spokesmen are promoted like that anymore.
Right. Don Mattingly.
Yeah. like that, kind of talk about the critic and like think of The Simpsons when they had that episode of all those baseball players. Like,
the baseball players used to be rock stars.
Yeah. I don't think it's the same anymore.
Yeah.
I think post-steroid era kind of changed things.
Bring back steroids in baseball. I have always been a big proponent of steroids in baseball, dude. We need the Bash Bros.
Yeah. Dude.
I want monsters playing this game.
I mean,
it's honestly, everybody knows baseball is kind of a boring game. It's fine.
Yeah, but
it's fine, but it's kind of boring. Throw those guys in it, throw some monsters in the mix.
Changes the game.
That's it.
I mean, it did change the game. Also watched another Seven release. It was Drowning by Numbers by Peter Greenaway.
Cool.
Which is a great fucking movie. I might loan you my disc. So
Please do. Yeah, I want to check that one out.
I mean, I think you might be more in tune to this than Zed and Two Knots. And the last thing that I ended up watching, it was a virtual date night with my girlfriend Leslie. We watched Murder Mansion, which she asked me, had I seen it? I'm like, yeah, I don't think I have. And then I totally have seen it. It's in one of those Vinegar Syndrome Forgotten Gialli box sets.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was in, I forget which volume it is, but it's been a while since I've seen it. And as I'm watching, it's like, it seems kind of familiar, but I don't remember anything from it. And like, really good. Kind of more of a bit of a haunted house kind of vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Some nice twist to it, so really enjoyable.
Cool.
For listen, I threw on a old favorite, which was Youth Attack by Charles Bronson.
Man, I know every fucking drum fill, every drum roll.
Yeah.
Every single musical note that is hit on that record, I know it by heart, and I could recreate that whole entire record front to back, what's the Police Academy guy,
Michael Winslow.
I could do a Michael Winslow and recreate it the entire, do it like Judd style, really. That record is just like seared into my fucking brain.
It's steered to my, but like I just got like kind of want to throw this on. It's like,
fuck yeah,
always a great listen.
10 songs, 10 minutes, right? Is that
there's
about
20 songs, probably 20 songs, about 10 minutes.
Yeah, 20. Okay,
which
is even better.
Which is the perfect length of a full length record.
Mm-hmm.
I stand by that. Also listen to the new Waysides. I guess it's single, but it's like, I guess it's building up to be an album. It's the song was Proud of You, but it had the 2 previous singles on there as well. That song is my favorite one they've put out so far.
Proud of You is?
Yeah, it's
right on. I think I liked Parallax a little more, but Proud of You, man, once the chorus kicks in, it's fucking crazy.
It's a rager. Final Gasp, who kind of the Sam Hain incarnate, which is, it's kind of nice that someone's like doing my, Glenn Danzig's best man, worship, Sam Hain. Better than Misfits or Danzig. I said it loud, so whatever, fuck you.
Everybody knows it.
Yeah, everyone knows Sam Hain was the best band he did. But Final Gasp is definitely in that Sam Hain vibe. They put out a new song off their forthcoming record, Morning Moon. It's called Blood and Sulfur. I didn't grab me as much as the previous two, but still pretty good.
Cool.
Listen to Death Is Nothing to Us by Fiddlehead.
Is that the LP?
It's the LP.
That's the new one?
Yeah.
Cool.
I kind of like it. I'm still processing it because, it's good, but like it hasn't really grabbed me.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
That's kind of how I feel about Fiddlehead in general.
Yeah, it's good, just hasn't grabbed me. But what has still grabbed me and I'm still fucking listening to is Enjoy Your Time in the Sun by Ultralight, the band from Philly that we talked about on previous episode. You text me this morning, they're like, yo, they just did a vinyl drop and it's almost already gone. So like I was like walking to my car and I had a bunch of shit in my hand. I put stuff down and fucking ordered that record.
Hell yes.
But yeah, it's they call it new alt rock or alternative rock, but like or whatever you want to call it. But this might be one of my favorite records of the year. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it's gonna land on my top 10 pretty easy. But it's just it's a nice like alternative rock record with definitely some punk and hardcore things flowing in it, but like not as overt as a lot of new stuff that's coming out. It's definitely a throwback to like the 90s and well produced, great songs. Love this record, so really stoked to get this on vinyl. But that is going to wrap up this episode of the Cinematic Void podcast. Tell us what you think of Carnival Souls and Night of the Living Dead. Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this episode, why don't you give us a 5-star on the, wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcast, or whatever the fuck it's called. If you could give us a review or give us a rating, much help, because it helps get the podcast out there to other people who may enjoy us sometimes talking about films and Nick talking a lot of shit about Dunkin' Donuts. But until next time, see you in the void.
slow moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.